Hey, welcome everybody to another edition of the Black Agenda podcast, and it is our weekly roundup number 14 to be exact, and we are back again Saturday at 4 o'clock to bring you the latest news from this past week. So we picked out some things, of course, as always, some big news, but also things that you may not have heard about coming through this week. So as always, I'm your co-host, Devin Dito, along with my co-host, Adrian Guest, and we are back again. And Adrian, we got a result, from the election, but still being contested, I guess you could say. I was about to say in a way, somewhat of a result. So we want to start. There's a lot of news, but we did want to at least recognize that this past week we did celebrate Veterans Day, and so of course we always want to say that we give our thanks and our sincere thanks to everyone who has served in the armed forces and has put their life on the line for a lot of the freedoms that we enjoy, particularly those of African American descent who were going out to fight wars, for people who didn't have rights that they didn't even have at home. And so it's, we want to recognize everybody in the armed forces. And so we just want to make sure we acknowledge that, Adrian. Of course, it was your idea, actually, to acknowledge it, before the show, to make sure that we did, to get some recognition to those who are fighting world wars around the world.
Yeah, exactly. I have, some family who have served in the military, uncles who've been in, Vietnam. My sister is in the reserve. So I definitely like to make sure that we represent, because at the end of the day, despite, what the commander in chief might say about, they may be, suckers and losers and things like that. With the Black Agenda, Devin, Adrian, we want everybody to know that, we really appreciate, those who have that level of bravery and courage, because everybody doesn't have it.
Exactly. So let's get into the show here and get started. And like I said, our very first topic is going to be the election. And so we kind of have a final result, I guess you could say. So the major networks, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they've all called the last three remaining states, which are Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. They've all been called. So they called Arizona and Georgia, surprisingly, for Joe Biden. And then they called North Carolina for Donald Trump. Now, there are still some votes being tallied in Arizona and North Carolina, but they have called it. And I think that was because you saw Joe Biden's lead, particularly in Georgia and Arizona, look pretty healthy. And so it's going to take a really, almost an act of God, really, to have Donald Trump come back and take over that lead. And then they gave North Carolina to Donald Trump. I think most people expected that. But that would leave us for a final electoral college tally of Joe Biden with 306 electoral votes and Donald Trump with 232, which, interestingly, is the exact same score that we had in 2016 when Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, 306 to 232. So, Adrian, we finally have this tally, but this is not over. Georgia just began a recount on Friday. This is what they're calling a post-election audit. And so they are actually hand counting 5 million votes. And they're going to go back and hand count and recount the results. And, Joe Biden currently leads the state by around 14,000 votes. So, again, it's going to take a humongous effort of finding thousands of Trump votes for Donald Trump to even take this state. But they felt it was necessary to do a recount because of the slim margin. And so right now, just to give you an idea of how this process is working in Georgia, across the state, they have what they call audit teams. And these are, I think it's like two people at a table. They have a batch of ballots, and they're counting them, and there are bipartisan panels that sit off to the side that actually get to look at some of the ballots, which are ones where it may not be clear what the voter's intention was, and then there are other ballots where they may do a write-in. There's a bipartisan panel that will look at those ballots, and then there are monitors that have been appointed by both the Democratic and Republican parties that are actually actively watching the counting. Now, they can't touch anything and they can't record, but they are actively watching. And so you might remember the Trump campaign made a big stink about what was happening in Philadelphia, trying to say that their monitors couldn't, see the vote counting that was going on. Well, here in Georgia, they're doing it by the book, Adrian, and they're making sure that, they've crossed the T's, dotted the I's to make sure that this recount goes exactly how it's supposed to go to. There's nothing going on. And so, although, even the Secretary of State has said that they don't expect this to swing the results either way, Adrian, I think some of the Trump camp are holding this is kind of a last gasp, to see if maybe something may happen to where Donald Trump could pull this out. It's not likely, but we'll see. The results are due on Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. The recount in Georgia has to be done by Wednesday. I don't think it's going to change anything, but we are at least going through the motions to say, in an act of transparency, they're going to do a recount.
Hey, Devin, there's one little bit of good news, I guess, for them. Looks like there's one county that did get in their results. Looks like Macon County.
Yep.
That seems like everybody should like that one. But they went, 86% Republicans. So Donald Trump got about 4,000 votes to Biden only getting about 625. So maybe he's hoping that there's some more Bacon counties out there. So that's the only thing I can hope for. I guess, well, he can hope for at least, because I definitely don't hope for that. But Devin, it just goes further into his strategy, which is to really just kind of just delay the American people just accepting the Biden administration, because I think he realizes that this is a losing battle. And when you look at what's going on in the court cases, Devin, it's definitely a losing battle. I mean, he continues to fight, but case after case gets kind of just turned down and he gets shut down. I mean, I was watching the news where some of his lawyers were talking and the judges just pressed them just plainly, what's your problem? If you've got Trump people, watching the ballot count, what's the issue?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, what are we at court for if we're doing things by the books? So it looks like, like I said, this week, the Trump campaign lost several different court battles relating to the election. Looks like during a court hearing in Pennsylvania, they were challenging 592 ballots, which I get, in the grand scheme of things, we should make sure that every ballot is validated and it's verified. But come on, I mean, this is not enough to really overturn anything. It's not enough to really do anything. And then the judge that was presiding over the case just kept asking the lawyer, was there any evidence of fraud? Come on, tell me what's going on? Like, what are we in court for? And the judge and the lawyer just kept saying no. And this was the same in Wisconsin, the same in Michigan. I'm just like, I don't get what the strategy is here, Devin, when they know that there's no fraud. I mean, you look at it, like I said, state after state, there's nothing but just spam and allegations of fraud. There's nobody actually being able to point to anything. So I don't really know what he's trying to do with this, because all of the judges, which a lot of these might be even Trump appointed judges, they're not partisan to this. They're just going by the books and the facts.
Yeah, I think looking at all of these lawsuits, I think if you look just this last week, Donald Trump, and at least the Trump campaign, lost 9 separate cases this week, or dropped, in total, either lost or dropped 9 cases related to the election. That's not good if you're planning on trying to flip 3 states at least in order for him to be able to overtake Joe Biden. And it didn't stop in Pennsylvania. I mean, even in, you noted in Michigan, they tried to block the certification of the election results in Wayne County, which includes Detroit. That was thrown out. They also withdrew a lawsuit in Arizona that was asking for a review of ballots that may have been counted as overvotes. And so they dropped that suit because they said, frankly, they felt the margin of victory in the state that Joe Biden had could not be overcome by reviewing these ballots. So that in itself is at least a little bit of an admission that this is over. Yeah. They're not going to be able to make up 14, 20, 90, 100,000 ballots in these states by reviewing 600 ballots in Pennsylvania and a few hundred ballots in Arizona. There just isn't this widespread, miscounting or fraud that they're alleging, even though the president has gone way down the road and said that these things definitely happened. And so I really do think that these lawsuits are really just for show. Donald Trump is great at theater. And this is really a show to say, hey, look, I'm still fighting. We're still in the courts. We're going to let this process play out. We can still win this thing. But it's just, they're getting knocked down one by one. So I think, it's probably not going to work, but I think for the president's ego and the folks who supported him, this is a last gasp and a last attempt to hopefully change the election results. It's probably going to be unsuccessful, but he can at least say, "Hey, we tried," by going through the court system. And so, like we've said before, all of these allegations of voter fraud so far, of mass widespread voter fraud, and that's the key, is widespread voter fraud, have really just been unproven. They have not been proven by anyone, even the campaign. The campaign at one point did have a voter fraud hotline, but they had to close it because it was being filled with spam and prank calls. I mean, I don't. You could have saw that coming. Like, if you're going to start a hotline and put the number out there, of course there were going to be hundreds, thousands of people who are going to call it and fill it up with spam and prank calls, because they know that this is an unproven venture here. But the big thing, Adrian, is that we did get some news that Attorney General Bill Barr stepped in and sent a memo on Monday requesting that DOJ prosecutors investigate allegations of widespread voter fraud. And, this caused essentially an earthquake. People were like, what is he doing? This is unfounded. This is really based on no real evidence, him sending out this memo. And all those prosecutors in like 16 different districts come back and said they could not find substantial irregularities within the voting system. I mean, these are 16 different prosecutors in 16 different districts, all saying the same thing. And Barr, this order that he sent out, it's something, Adrian, we feel like we've said this before, that our institutions are becoming politicized. I think this was at the request of Donald Trump to say, hey, we need you to go ask the Justice Department to investigate all these claims, and they didn't find anything. I mean, this request was so far out of line that it actually caused the director of the Department of Justice's Elections Crime Branch to resign. Richard Pilger, or I hope I'm saying that right, Pilger, he resigned because this memo was so against longstanding policy that prevented the DOJ from interfering in elections. And so, Adrian, it just seems like this is a scorched earth type of policy from the Trump campaign. They're going to use every institution and every, allegation, every court system to try to push this narrative that there is widespread voter fraud. But yet here we are 10 days after Election Day and no proof. There's no hard evidence to suggest any of this has happened, but they are using our institutions to try to, come up with some kind of evidence, and it can't.
Yeah, Devin, I mean, it's just crazy. Whenever you think about Barr's memo, we already have what you were talking about, the election crimes branch under the DOJ. And the memo was for prosecutors who weren't even involved, with that branch. I mean, they weren't even supposed to be investigating, election crimes and different things like that. He also wanted them to skip, different procedural steps to investigate the allegations. I mean, it just shows how far they're willing to go to just to get something on the books to say that the 2020 election had, some sort of voter fraud or some sort of something that was going on that made it to where Joe Biden is the winner, but it was supposed to have been Donald Trump. I mean, when you talk about those 16 prosecutors, I mean, these were bipartisan prosecutors, so these were on both sides. And they tried to say, hey, AG Barr, you need to stop this order because it really goes against facts. So I'm hopeful that the department is going to kind of come against this partisanship. Their leader, AG Barr, is not. I mean, he's definitely a sycophant to Donald Trump. But, Devin, one of the interesting things that we were able to see is that the New York Times actually called every state to actually tap into these allegations of voter fraud. And I thought that was very interesting. I'm glad that the New York Times, hats off to them because they've been doing some really, really great stories, here lately. I hadn't really watched them in a lot of years, but hey, good job on doing this. They were able to get about 45 states where the officials actually responded. And they were just like, no allegations of voter fraud. I mean, they were just like, everything went seamless. I mean, the Republican Secretary of State in Ohio put it best. He said, there's a great human capacity for inventing things that aren't true about elections. the conspiracy theories and
Wow.
rumors and all those things run rampant. For some reason, elections breed that type of mythology. I thought that was a really, really powerful statement from a Republican Secretary of State in Ohio, which is, a very Republican rich state. I mean, it's, that's one I think that Donald Trump, I don't know if he won it this year, but I think he may have. So
He did.
yeah,
Ohio. Yeah.
yeah,
By a
exactly.
lot, actually. 8
Yeah.
points, I believe.
So I'm just like Devin. They just keep saying, no voter fraud. The president keeps trying to fabricate different things. You even got, again, back to your state, Devin. I don't know what's going on in Texas. Maybe it's something in the drinking water or the food, or I don't know what's going on. But you got the lieutenant governor down there putting up a $1 million reward for voter fraud. So
Good
I'll let
Lord.
you get into that story, Devin.
My goodness. Yeah, so like Adrian said, it's Texas. It's Texas. You expect crazy stuff like this. I mean, this is the same guy, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who during the pandemic said our grandfathers and grandparents were okay with being sacrificed so that the rest of us could go outside and go get haircuts and things. So I don't, I'm not shocked it's him, but yeah, so the Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has put up $1 million reward for voter fraud tips that lead to an arrest and a conviction for the 2020 presidential election. And so, again, Dan Patrick is just another Republican who is feckless and has no backbone and is not going to tell Donald Trump, you lost this election fair and square. It's over. Nobody in that party has the backbone to do that. And Dan Patrick is just another one in the line who's just going to, whatever Donald Trump says goes. And so we've been over this. The New York Times is looking for people to tell them where there's voter fraud. They didn't get a chance to contact Texas, but a spokeswoman in Harris County, Texas, which is the largest county in Texas, which they have a population greater than many states, they said they only had a few minor issues and the elections were seamless. So the idea that there's somehow massive voter fraud and that caused Donald Trump to lose this election is just false. I mean, if anything, if you look in Texas in particular, I believe the senator, John Cornyn, may have actually gotten more votes than Donald Trump, the Republican senator in Texas. So, I mean, it might be the Democrats need to be the ones screaming voter fraud, for a Senate candidate to get more votes in the state than the presidential candidate. Just saying. It can go both ways. Both allegations are probably false, but still, it doesn't help anybody. And also, just to... go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you're completely true.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and just to really show how different this election is and how secure it actually was, we saw here on late Thursday, there's a Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. They're part of the Department of Homeland Security, but they said on Thursday that the 2020 election was the most secure ever. And this is despite President Trump's allegations that it's been rigged, it's full of fraud, mail-in voting is full of fraud. They say it's the most secure ever. And the reason they say that is because they said that voting systems were more secure through pre-election testing, state certification of voting equipment, and the U.S. Election Assistance Commission certification of that equipment. So I think, Adrian, what you see is a definite reaction to 2016, where there was, allegations flying all over the place of Russians, hacking maybe voter equipment or voting systems and websites and things. So what you see now in 2020 is a definite effort to protect the integrity of our elections. And, it's funny to me that we have the most secure election and then we have a president in the White House who's trying to say it's rigged and it's fake and there's fraud everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if it's not helping anybody.
It just goes to show you, Devin, what Trump is all about. I mean, he's just a disruptor. I mean, that's not disruptor in the good way, like Uber or something like that did. I mean, he's a disruptor that is really just trying to dismantle our democracy and our American way of life. I mean, you got the director of the agency who was, this agency again said, the most secure election in American history. their director, Chris Krebs.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah, that's right. Bold, very bold statement. But the director told his associate that he expects to be fired, for putting out this report. And I mean, that's just, I get that we're in a democracy, but that's just almost appalling that a president has that much authority to just fire people just because they put out truthful information. But that's kind of where we are, where this guy has to be, threatened to kind of play into Trumpism. And we don't really need that. I mean, I get that, we had 70 million people who liked Trumpism, but when you get to the core of what Trumpism is, I mean, this is it. I mean, it's a campaign to sow distrust in our systems, dismantle our infrastructure that we have for American democracy. So, I mean, Devin, it's very clear that this election is in the books. I mean, this election is secure. I mean, you can't argue that, Donald Trump won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote. I mean, he lost the Electoral College by a lot. He lost the popular vote by a lot. Joe Biden was able to flip, Arizona, which, that's where the late John McCain was. I mean, very Republican-rich state. He was able to do that with Georgia. I mean, come on, let's just go ahead and move on. So I hope that we'll be able to get some reconciliation from our occupant of the White House so that he can just kind of get ready to pack up in the next couple months.
I wouldn't hold your breath. We're going to see. No, I think there will come a moment where he's going to have to accept it. I think eventually he will, it is what it is. He's going to look forward maybe 2024, putting one of his sons up to run next. I think, but it's obvious. It's highly unlikely that the election officials in all those states you just named, in cahoots together, flip those states in favor of Joe Biden just to get Donald Trump out. Come on. If there was evidence of that with the amount of people it would take, we would know by now. Come on. We know this. The government leaks all the time. If somebody knew this, they would have already put it out there. So it's just unlikely, and it's not doing any good for the country Donald Trump claims he loves so much, to sit here and sow so much chaos and divide it even more after the last 4 years. I mean, it's just ridiculous. People need to just accept it. It is what it is. Your guy lost. We had to do all this in 2016. We didn't believe Hillary Clinton lost, but she did. And we had to eventually just move on. And that's what we're going to do. So with that, that's going to do it for our first segment. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19. Of course, we have to. It is still getting worse here in the United States. We're going to talk about COVID, but we're also going to talk about some good news on the horizon, which is a vaccine is coming. And then we're going to also talk about the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris transition in the federal government. So stick with us, and we'll be right back to cover all that. Europe.
All right, viewers, welcome back to the show. So, just to kind of get into our next segment here, we definitely got to talk about COVID. I think that even though we're talking, we're kind of in election mode and we're kind of thinking about the next administration and we're kind of quarantine fatigue, we really have to pay attention to what's going on with our pandemic and the status of the virus right now. When you look at it, according to MSNBC, United States is really setting records with coronavirus this go around. I mean, we've had our fourth consecutive day where we've had more than 184,000 cases. I mean, when you think about that, I mean, I feel like in the past 10 days, I mean, we probably added at least 1 million cases because I mean, we keep doing 100,000+ cases per day, and we've got over 68,000 people hospitalized. I mean, the U.S. Continues to average about 1,000 deaths per day. According to NPR, the 2-week trend for cases is up 77%, and deaths are up 26.5%. Total, Devin, the U.S. stands at over 10.7 million cases and close to 245,000 deaths. I mean, this is not going away. I think that we can be tired of the virus, we can be tired of quarantining, but what is clear from the numbers is this is not going away. I mean, states that didn't really have a high case turnout of this, they're really starting to see their cases and their hospitalizations just really go through the roof. I mean, you got North Dakota now; they're having to mandate masks. You got cities like New York and Chicago announcing new restrictions in preparation for Thanksgiving because we know that people are going to be gathering, not wearing masks, talking, eating at the dinner table. People flying from all over the country, coming together to bond, the young, the old. It's really going to be a mess of a situation going into the holidays because I mean you got Thanksgiving, then right after Thanksgiving you got Christmas, Devin, and I mean everybody loves to get together on both of those holidays, and I just find that it's going to be hard to tell Americans you can't gather for Thanksgiving and Christmas. You need to do it virtually. I just think that's going to be a really hard pill to swallow for most families, and I think that it's going to be really difficult for governors, for local municipalities and different things like that to enforce any sort of mandate when it comes to these holiday gatherings.
Yeah, I mean it's I just don't want people to yes, the New York City is saying that they're going to limit gatherings to 10 people. They want you to. They're not going to be busting up your Thanksgiving dinner if it is more than 10 people. But they're hoping that people will take this seriously. And it's funny. This is getting a lot worse this past week, and Donald Trump has been MIA. I don't know. He hasn't really said much about the virus and the cases and telling people to take it seriously. Not that we necessarily expect him to, but at least in March and April, he was, at the coronavirus task force conferences speaking about it. But he's been pretty much silent. And so it is getting worse. And just for those folks who may be wondering why it's getting worse, it is not just because of testing. Testing is up. Testing is definitely up, but it is not solely. And testing does not cause cases. Testing only lets you know who has the virus, where the cases are. It doesn't give people the virus. So it's not this thing of, well, if you do more testing, you find more cases. That is true to an extent. If the virus wasn't spreading more, we would be finding less cases. We could do 1 million tests a day, and we would continue to find less cases. Right now, it is getting worse, and people need to continue, wearing the mask and social distancing. It's difficult because we're going into the holidays. I want to go home, but I'm probably not because, I don't want to take COVID down there, or I don't want to contract it and bring it back up here with me. I know folks in my family who have had this virus already. It is nothing to play with. So you may not necessarily die from it, but like you say, hospitalizations are up. You still could end up in the hospital with this virus, and you could end up with a nasty, hospital bill at the end of it all. So we definitely need to take it seriously. Doesn't mean that you can't live your life, but definitely wear your mask and stuff. And you really see the difference in these administrations already. Biden has a COVID-19 task force put together of different doctors and things. Trump really had the coronavirus task force, which is a little bit different, very politicized. And he was really trying to censor Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. as far as what they were saying. But there is good news on the horizon, which is that a vaccine is getting very close, honestly. So we heard this week that Pfizer and BioNTech announced that their COVID-19 vaccine is 90% effective, which is incredibly high for a vaccine. And so they're actually, they're going through they're going through checking their data right now, but they're planning to submit for an emergency use authorization from the FDA after their safety milestones are met, and that could happen by the third week of November. So maybe, by the time Thanksgiving gets here, we could be looking at a possible vaccine, a few weeks away. And it's not just Pfizer. It's actually Moderna is pretty close to announcing, the results of their clinical trials. So people are expecting that vaccine trial to go very well also. But just to put this in context, we are close, but we're not quite there yet as far as the vaccine. Dr. Fauci is saying we're looking at, first quarter 2021, April of 2021 to have it widely available. But when it does become available, it's probably going to go to those who are on the front lines, doctors and nurses who are treating people first. And then after that, it will come to the rest of us. But, Adrian, the Trump administration is somehow still promising 20 million doses of a vaccine by the end of this year. Not sure if they're going to actually get there, considering the logistics of, distributing a vaccine, especially one like the Pfizer vaccine that has to be kept in very cold storage, and it is 2 doses, not just one. And then you also have to get over the hump of convincing people that it's safe. And so that's a whole nother animal that we're going to have to deal with. So, AJ, it's like we're almost there. We've gone through this the entire year. We said we're going to close down and lock down in March and April. We're going to get through this. And that happened, but it kind of didn't. And then we had the summer. We tried to lock down slightly again. And then now it's back again. I think people are just fatigued and they're tired of it and they want it to go away. But we just have to hold on for these next couple months, get through the holidays. And in January 2021, we should have a vaccine ready.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Devin. I think that's what Dr. Fauci was saying on the news this week was that, hold tight, a vaccine's on the horizon. Got to buckle down. We know that everyone's tired. We know that everyone's, just fatigued with this quarantine, but we have to think more about our communities because if this thing doesn't kill you, it could kill somebody you know. And I think that's I think that's what New Jersey governor said. It was like if you can't figure out what to tell somebody about, it's uncomfortable to wear a mask. He's like, it's uncomfortable to die, and it really is. I haven't died, but I would imagine it's very uncomfortable to die. But what were you about to say, Devin?
No, I was just wanted to point out too. We have governors who are already staking their flag, saying that they're not going to participate in a new round of lockdowns or mask mandates. You got Tate Reeves in Mississippi already saying that Mississippi won't participate. The state that has the highest black population that is being hammered by this virus, he's saying that they're not going to participate if there's a new mask mandate or a lockdown. And so, again, we're already seeing it, Adrian, this resistance to wanting to take this thing seriously. We saw this in North Dakota. They sat there and said, we don't need to wear masks. It's not that bad. And here they are, rising hospitalizations and deaths and cases. They have to mandate masks. It's better. I would much rather be on the front end than on the back end trying to control it when it's out of control. When you could have done the work beforehand. So I just want to make sure people, understood that even with the Biden administration, the resistance to this virus and taking it seriously is still going to be there.
No, you're right. It's really good. I think they were even talking about Justice Thompson, Justice Thomas trying to talk about in the Supreme Court mask mandates and how that might not be something that's constitutionally legal or something. So it's just, I hope we don't get to such a point to where we're just really, where we don't understand basic hygiene. I think I saw one doctor who almost equated wearing a mask is kind of like using toilet paper. It's something so basic that you shouldn't try to publicize it or whatever. But again, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the coronavirus, a little bit about the vaccine to give you a little bit of peace of mind. But on to something else that's going to bring us hopefully out of this pandemic, because I know this current administration is just wasted every chance and opportunity they've had to bring us out. So I'm very hopeful that the Biden-Harris ticket is going to be very robust and get us out of this thing. But we've seen, Donald Trump has yet to concede, yet to congratulate, and yet to say anything about Biden winning. But you've got world leaders from Germany, Israel, China, Turkey, the UK, and Canada who've called in to say congratulations, President-elect Joe Biden, VP-elect Kamala Harris. They've done that. However, you don't hear anything from Russia, Brazil, and Mexico. I figure we won't hear anything from Russia. I imagine that they're not too happy. They were probably hoping for a different turnout because Trump, whether you want to admit to it or not, he was definitely a lot more friendly towards Russia than any other American president usually is. Devin, whenever you look at the Trump team and kind of what he's doing to the Biden transition team, I mean, he's just holding this thing up. I mean, he's just like let me rephrase that. It's him, but it's the entire institution. I mean, because you've got the General Services Administration, that's the agency that certifies a winner for president. I mean, they're holding this thing up. I mean, Emily Murphy, who's a Trump appointee, she could have a little bit of backbone to say, all right, even though she's saying a winner hasn't been determined or it's not clear. I mean, she can actually come out and say, all right, let's just follow suit with all the major news outlets. Let's just follow suit with the facts. Let's just follow suit with the courts who are turning down all this voter fraud, and let's just call this thing. But you've got people who are just such sycophants of Donald Trump and just want to play into every and anything to kind of help to just delay this process. So it's silly, Devin, to have somebody like her just really just dragging this process out when, like I said, how are you going to overcome 5 million plus votes? I mean, you're down, almost 80 votes in the Electoral College? Come on, man.
Exactly. And that's the frustration. I know the Biden team has to be frustrated dealing with this. I mean, because it doesn't make any sense. I get it. Your guy lost, you're upset. But at a certain point, for the betterment of the country and just we have to move on, you have to accept the results. And to say that there isn't a winner that has yet to be, the winner isn't clear is ridiculous. What election are you watching? You're not watching the 360 electoral votes that Joe Biden got. What are you looking at? I mean, are you not watching all these lawsuits that Trump is bringing that keep getting knocked down? Like, what are you waiting on? Are you just waiting on the say of Donald Trump to say, okay, they can go forward with this transition? I think this is just another example of how the government agencies have been politicized to the point where they essentially just work for Donald Trump. They don't work for us, even though we're paying their bills and their paychecks and everything. They work for Donald Trump, and that's why he puts them in their position. And he asks people, are you going to be loyal? Because trust me, Donald Trump is looking at these people saying, are you being loyal to me right now? And saying that the winner has not yet been declared. And that is what Emily Murphy is doing. She's continuing that message and not allowing this transition to move on. And so, but there are some people who are starting to see the writing on the wall and understand that things need to move on. In particular, this is according to The Hill. There's an Oklahoma Republican senator, his name is James Lankford, who came out and said that he doesn't see anything wrong with Joe Biden receiving intelligence briefings because he has not been receiving them, even though he has won the election. And so Mr. Lankford said he doesn't see a problem with it. Kamala Harris is already on the Intelligence Committee, so she's getting a lot of this information already. And so Lankford even said that if Joe Biden was not getting the briefings by this past Friday, that he would step in and ensure that, he would start getting them. And so Lankford, in a way, is out of step with the Republican Party's leadership, like Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell and Marco Rubio, who really have not acknowledged that Joe Biden is the winner. Mitch McConnell refused to say it when he addressed the floor, but they want to address the fact that all their senators picked up a bunch of seats in the House in the same election. So it doesn't make any sense. You want to accept the House and Senate election results, but you won't accept the presidential election results. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me what the strategy is here. But you are seeing other GOP senators starting to, push this on. Senator Chuck Grassley has said, he doesn't mind Joe Biden getting the briefings. Even Lindsey Graham said he thinks Joe Biden should be getting them. And even Senate Majority Whip John Thune has said Biden should be getting these classified briefs. And it may not seem like it matters, even though Joe Biden can't do anything with the information he's getting. It just at least gives you an idea of what you're walking into. And just to put this into a historical context, even with the 2000 election and all the chaos that was going on, President Clinton still gave George W. Bush the presidential briefings to make sure that he was prepared for when they did take over. And so if Clinton can do that and mix a Florida recount with his vice president, why can't Donald Trump do that? Like, grow up and just give the man the briefings and accept the election results and move past. Like, it's not doing any of us any good at this point.
I agree, Devin. I mean, it's just crazy and insanity to believe that something's going to change. I mean, like I said, it's mathematically impossible at this point. But you've only got really 4 Republican senators who recognize Biden as a winner, even though the margins are so large. I mean, you've got, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo during a news conference joking about a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. You've got, White House advisor Peter Navarro saying that they're operating under the assumption of a second Trump term. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that you got this kind of stuff. And you even got staffers and different personnel being told that they don't need to look for other employment or else they may be getting fired. I mean, staffers were told to stay in the fight. You've got the director of personnel telling department heads they can fire appointees if they're looking for other jobs, even though a lot of their contracts are going to expire tomorrow. So it's kind of unclear what they would even be doing. Devin, I mean, it's just really, really sad that you've got an administration that's really just trying to uphold democracy. When we've got a lot of stuff that's going on, we've got a pandemic. The Biden team needs to be ready for this pandemic. I mean, if you're talking about climate change, if you're talking about Russia, Donald Trump's always harping on China. Well, the incoming president needs to know what's going on so we can be prepared to tackle China or whatever the issues are. So I don't really know what the strategy is of why they're trying to hold it up. But you've got a lot of people like ex-chief of staff John Kelly, who really did come out and just saying that this is not the way we need to be doing things. Said that you can't go from just 0 to 1,000 miles per hour when you're transitioning one of the largest governments on the planet. I mean, you can't do that. You got even former President Barack Obama coming in and saying that this is not only delegitimizing the Biden administration, but it's really delegitimizing democracy and dismantling our systems here, because you can have people in future elections say, voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud, or you can have other people who don't concede and try to contest their elections. So yeah, Devin, it's just going to be a messy situation if we don't have some Republicans get some backbone over the next couple months.
I sure hope they can find one. I don't have much faith, but I sure hope they find a backbone to stand up to Trump. He has no power now. Yeah, I know he's still president for like another month and a half, but he, at this point, I think they're more worried about his base and what that's going to do to them later on. If, we're going to talk about what Trump is going to do after the election, and this may be why a lot of Republicans are hesitant to break with him and say that Joe Biden won this thing. And so that's going to do it for our second segment. We're going to come up our last news segment here. We're going to talk about, what are Trump's plans for after the election. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other government employees who were fired, some high-profile government employees who were fired by President Trump. And then we're going to get into our quick hits, and then we'll be finished. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to get into our last news segment here, and we're going to talk about Trump's plans for after the presidency, some high-profile government firings. But we wanted to start with some comments that Trump made yesterday about the coronavirus vaccine, and in particular, who was going to get it. And he was talking about the rollout of the vaccine, but for some reason during his delivery, he made a very concerted attempt to point out that New York would not be in on the delivery of this first batch of the vaccine. And again, this is just an example of kind of the pettiness that we've seen from President Trump when it comes to dealing with real, very serious issues. And so Donald Trump, for some reason, said the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, does not trust the vaccine, and therefore his state will not get it first. And so Governor Cuomo, in response to it, said that the state would independently review the vaccines before they distribute them because of the politicizing of the vaccine process by the president. And other states like California, Washington, Oregon, and Nevada have also joined in on California's vaccine safety review process. And so, Adrian, this is really setting up a weird kind of dance that governors are going to do with the president when it comes to the vaccine, because we know that the president has been cheerleading this process from the very beginning, rushing or applying pressure to government agencies and hoping that a vaccine, he kept saying it's going to come before Election Day, and it was going to come on Election Day. We're going to get it before the end of the year. He's told us, I don't know how many times, that the virus is just going to magically go away. He was saying before the election that we were turning a corner. It was like we were turning a corner into higher cases and record cases. So I guess there is some skepticism about these vaccines, but you have to walk this line pretty finely if you're going to be Andrew Cuomo and these governors, because you want people to trust it. Mm-hmm. So you can't just say it doesn't work, but they're going to ask questions as to why you're having to review it before you distribute it, even though it's come from third-party companies. So, you're in your state, they're doing this review process. So it's really weird. It's interesting to me how they're going to walk this line of, yes, we trust it, but we want to review it at the same time.
No, I get that. And I mean, it's one of those things to where I guess whenever you have the person in charge saying that, we're very, very much ahead of schedule, it just brings some doubt into the whole process. But hey, one of the little nuggets I want to plug in here, because I'm thinking about doing it, but viewers, there's a lot of different websites you can go to learn about how you can actually participate in some of these trials and actually, do the coronavirus vaccine and kind of help with the research that's going to need to take place to actually get our entire world, through this. So I wanted to make sure to plug that in there because, it's important to kind of participate. Onto some more things to kind of break up the silence with Trump. He did fire Defense Secretary Esper. And remember, I think Esper was saying that, he didn't want to be Trump's yes man anymore because, Esper kind of shout out against his Trump's use of troops in the streets to kind of clear people out. But, Devin, I think over the next 2 months, we're going to see a little bit of The Apprentice kind of happening. In the White House. You've got two senior administration officials that noted that, Mr. Trump enjoys firing people, only has about 2 more months to do so. You got two White House officials who said the FBI director and the CIA director could be next. So I'm just like,
goodness gracious.
What could this guy do in his last 2 months? I mean, he could do a lot. I mean, I think just to kind of calm the water a little bit, I think a lot of the Pentagon leaders have said, even with some of the change-ups he's done with the Pentagon, with installing like Anthony Tata, somebody who called Barack Obama a terrorist leader, our Pentagon leaders have kind of said there's little, I know, I kind of just rubbed that in there just a little bit because it's just so ridiculous for somebody to call, Barack Obama that. But the leaders have kind of just said, hey, we should be able to hold our own. We're not looking to get into this back and forth and looking to get the military involved in politics. So it's really nice to see or hear that from them. But it's not good to see that Trump is really just trying to disrupt our national security. And I mean, when you think about it, viewers, I mean, this could potentially undermine, what our relationships are around the world, because people could look at us as, look, we're getting weaker, we're making childish decisions and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely just wanted to throw that out there, that we need to make sure that call your senators and your representatives and tell them that over the next 2 months that we need to keep this lame duck president in charge and in line.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a could be a dangerous time. When you get to playing around with firing people for the heck of it, because they're not yes men. You do make us vulnerable, to people around the world who may be looking to attack us and do other, nefarious things. They may look and say, oh, well, they're in the middle of a crisis because the president's firing everybody in the government, and we haven't started a transition to the next administration. So definitely not what you want to see going into next year amongst the pandemic. But hopefully, that doesn't happen. But we did, of course, we kept saying it. We're going to tell you what the president is planning to do after he leaves the White House, hopefully, on January 20th. So right now we've been hearing whispers about this for a while, but this is starting to pick up. But the president has been telling people that as soon as Biden is certified as a 2020 winner, he will announce his candidacy for the 2024 election already. And so I'm not shocked. I don't know if it's going to happen, though. I don't know if Trump wants to go through this again. But, he's laying the groundwork there for a possible 2024 run. And this has only happened, I think, one other time where a president has served 2 terms, but they were not consecutive. And that was Grover Cleveland. And that was a long time ago. So if Trump does win in 2024, he would be making a little bit of history there. But his advisors have said that he doesn't really have a plan to overturn this election, and that would be obvious by the way that they're litigating all these cases and they're getting thrown out. But he would rather just maintain the base that he currently has, the 70+ million people who voted for him. He wants to keep them, in his corner, in his camp for a 2024 run. And of course, for the GOP and other Republicans who want to run in 2024, including his own vice president, this could be a problem, when they're trying to compete against a former president. You have other people like Mike Pompeo, John Kasich, Nikki Haley, who may also want to run in 2024 and could see having to run against Donald Trump again. We know how that happened, or how that went in 2016. They may not want to jump out there. So we'll see if Trump is for real about that as far as running. But one thing that may give some credence to that is that he does want to compete with Fox News. He has not been shy about in his criticism of Fox News. And it's funny to me how Fox News, we used to look at it as being very conservative, and now it's not enough, to the right for the president and his supporters. They're now saying Fox News is working for the liberals and the Democrats and Joe Biden somehow. I don't know how that happened, but Trump said, he wants to compete against Fox News, and they're saying Trump has plans to start a digital media company to actually take on Fox News. And so I remember on election night, there were reports coming out that they were furious at Fox News for calling Arizona as early as they did. And so I'm sure that didn't do anything to help the relationship between that network and the president. And so the network's been calling Joe Biden president-elect, which Donald Trump, of course, doesn't like, because he thinks the election isn't over. And so, Adrian, although Donald Trump might exit the White House on January 20th, we will not be done. Because if a Trump television network pops up, we could be dealing with another 10 years of the Donald Trump and the Trump family. Don Jr. is on a list of possible candidates for 2024. So he's not going away quietly at all. Not that I don't even know if we expected him to.
No, I definitely don't expect him to leave the White House quietly. I think that I think it's going to come to the point to where they're going to have to escort him and his family out of the White House. I definitely think over the next 4 years, he's an idiot, but I think he also understands the situation he is in, which he knows there's a lot of legal battles coming against him. That's why he's so petty against New York, because their Defense Department is really coming out against him with his organization. A lot of different things with donations. You got the Stormy Daniels thing. There's a lot of different things going on with Donald Trump, and being president is really the only thing that protects him. So I definitely think that after these, after he gets out of there, he's just going to use his pull and his influence to just fund his legal lawsuits and different things like that. He's going to use it to kind of keep his base going, so that if he does want in 4 years to back his son or back Mike Pence, well, hey, that's 70 million people he's been able to connect with over the next 4 years, raise money with over the next 4 years. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely think no matter how we look at it, Donald Trump is going to be with us. And that's a sad reality, because I think that most people woke up on November 4th with a little bit of relief, thinking that we had gotten rid of him. But I think based on the report, viewers, we got Trump in the mix for a little bit longer. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our last little break here, and when we come back, we're going to leave you with our quick hits, and we'll just let you. We'll also make sure you know how to follow us, our upcoming episodes, and then we'll let you get on out of here.
All right, welcome back, viewers. So we are at the end of our show. As always, we like to leave you with a little bit of kind of funny news, maybe some things you didn't hear about this week, and we always call them quick hits. So there's some short stories we're going to read you and leave you with some good things and some funny things that you might find. So our very first story we're going to talk about is DoorDash. And so we've all been using it, of course, during the pandemic. I know I have. But DoorDash has actually filed the paperwork to go public. And so they filed the paperwork for an initial public offering to offer stock on the stock market. And they filed the paperwork on Friday. Now, DoorDash was founded in 2013. And since then, they have really grown exponentially, especially this year. And so they've actually captured 50% of the food delivery market in just 7 short years here. And so they compete against companies you probably heard like Uber Eats and Postmates. But DoorDash feels as though it is time for them to go public. Their revenue is humongous. For people who are into finance and stocks and buying and trading things, DoorDash's revenue just this year, and we haven't even completed the year, was $1.9 billion in 2020. The company currently has about 18 million customers, and they have about 1 million what they call dashers, who are people who deliver the food to you. And just to wrap this up, the company said it waited to file its IPO until after a vote in California on Proposition 22. And the reason that matters is because Proposition 22 was on the ballot because it would have mandated that delivery companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats treat their delivery drivers as employees and not contractors. And so they waited until after that, and I think Proposition 22 was voted down, I believe. Adrian, I know you're in California, so you know more about it than I do, but I believe it was voted down, and so they waited until after that to file their IPO.
No, yeah, I think so. I guess I had to look up 'cause I can't remember. I couldn't remember, but yeah, Prop 22 passes in California. It looks like yeah. I just had to
Yeah.
Google that real quick. So yeah, I can imagine it
Okay.
definitely kept them kind of on the lookout for that. But onto another bit of quick hits here. Looks like Meghan McCain trolls Donald Trump after the election loss. And of course, Donald Trump, mocked her father, the late John McCain, by saying that he was a war hero because he was captured, and I like people who weren't captured. So again, very appalling comments
Goodness.
from the commander in chief, head of the armed forces. John McCain, we all respect him, but you've got his daughter, fired back with the meme of John on the caption that read, "I like people who don't lose Arizona." So, very, like I said, very, very nice to kind of
Yeah.
have that. I think the McCain family endorsed the Biden administration, the Biden team, and it's just clear that they saw great merit in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris comparatively to the opposite.
Definitely. I think that's the McCain family, like you said, is the reason he won Arizona. Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, endorsed Joe Biden, and so that was huge in swinging Arizona to him. So it is funny to see Meghan McCain poke Donald Trump there and say, "That's what you get for saying my father wasn't a war hero." Particularly because Donald Trump never served because of bone spurs. But we'll we'll move on. So our next story. Comes to you out of Georgia. Now, I thought this was hilarious, but there was a woman there arrested after she posed as an FBI agent to get free Chick-fil-A. Now, this is a 47-year-old Kimberly Ragsdale was arrested by Rockmart, Georgia police after she reportedly called a Chick-fil-A restaurant and threatened to arrest the employees if they didn't give her a free meal. Now, she took it a step further. The employee says she actually showed up to the Chick-fil-A location multiple times, and she was driving a white minivan, I guess to look like she was with the FBI, and she came to the restaurant inside and asked multiple times for them to give her a free Chick-fil-A meal, and if they didn't, she was going to have them arrested. And so Miss Ragsdale actually kept up the charade even after she was arrested. And so when the police showed up, she tried to say that her credentials they were asking for were electronic, and so she couldn't get them. And then as they arrested her and walked her to the car, she then went in her shirt like this to talk like she was on a radio to say that somebody was arresting her. And that the FBI needed to send someone to Rockmart PD to get her out. And so, needless to say, she did not get her free Chick-fil-A after all that. She did get a night in jail, and she was booked on Thursday and was released on a $3,000 bond. So, Adrian, I've never heard that before. I know Chick-fil-A is good. I didn't think it was that good to be posing as FBI agents. But yeah, props to her, man. She went all the way. She didn't even let the arrest phase her.
Yeah, I give her credit for being committed, Devin. I mean, she was committed to the cause. I mean, she scoped the place out a couple of times. She tried to
Goodness.
have a disguise. Probably she had the band. No telling what she did to really, to really try to sell the moment. I'm sure she probably even put a voice. With the shirt thing, she probably had one of those things in her ear or whatever.
Come on. Like, I'm being arrested at Chick-fil-A. Send somebody to Rockmart PD. Like, what are you doing?
On, I mean, that's commitment, though. I mean, in 2020, that's true commitment.
Yeah.
Now, onto a good some upbeat news here. Devin, when I saw this story, I was like, man, I would love to see this happen, everywhere. Because I mean, I've got some trash I need to take out right now. But it looks like, viewers, we've got a group of Dutch students who've created a fully functioning electric car that operates off of waste. And the waste includes like plastics, fish out of the sea, recycled bottles, and even household garbage. So, I mean, it's a huge thing. I mean, I know, right now, I think gas prices are, kind of, average right now. But I mean, if we could, afford to, just put our trash into our car, I think that would definitely be really cool to be able to do that. right now the car is, kind of small. It's only like a, sporty two-seater. So you can't really do, have a whole family in there.
Yeah.
Looks like it goes about 56 miles an hour and reaches about 136 miles when it's fully charged. But it's a good precursor to something. The group was composed of, looks like, 22 students, and it only took them 18 months to do this, Devin. So, wow. I don't know. This could be the next wave of vehicles. We were trying to tap into with, using the sun to power our cars and stuff, and using electricity, but maybe we can use waste. So, I don't know. We'll be on the lookout.
Yeah, that would be super cool. If all my garbage could go into my car and power, that'd be awesome. So our last story here is a really good story. And if you're one of those people who goes and plays the lottery and you play the same numbers every single time, there is hope. And this comes out of North Carolina here. There was a couple who has played the same set of lottery numbers for the past 26 years. There are a couple in North Carolina. They actually finally won off that set of numbers. And and for their patience, as they say, they won $366,000 playing that same set of numbers for 26 years. The couple says they've actually gotten close a few times, and that's what kept them committed to going back and continuing to play those same numbers. And so they finally hit it. 26 years later, they finally won, and they say they plan to use the money to make their retirement more comfortable and live out, their later years, with their lottery winnings. So, Adrian, I've played the lottery a little bit. I don't play the same numbers, but maybe, if you just kind of do it passively, 26 years later, you might win a nice chunk of change.
I know, Devin. That's hard to believe that they were able to do that. But if you can make it happen, you can make it happen. So hats off to them. Maybe I need to start playing my hand into the lottery.
Yeah, I know a lot of people they'll do your birthday or something, your telephone number. But 26 years is a commitment. That's 26 years playing the same numbers is definitely a commitment. But at the end of the day, it might actually be worth it. So that's going to do it for our show today. We appreciate y'all sticking with us here. This is Weekly Roundup number 14. And again, we love to bring you guys the news and everything. So we always ask at the end of the show for you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us at Black Agenda Pod. It is right there in your screen at the top. Make sure you follow us. Share this video on YouTube, share it on Facebook, reach out to your friends, tell them to watch it. We're always trying to get new folks in to listen to the podcast and to watch. You can listen to our podcast actually on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Really anywhere that you listen to your music and podcasts, you can find us. Just type in The Black Agenda. And of course, what we're doing here is not free as much as we would like it for it to be. And so Adrian has some ways in which you can donate to us to help us keep this going and to grow this into something really spectacular.
Yeah, viewers, like I said, or rather like Devin said, we're trying to do things, lobby leaders, offer educational scholarships. So we need you to help with that. You can actually go to Patron, which is spelled patron.podbean, which is spelled podbean.com/Black Agenda Pod. So the full thing, patron.podbean.com/Black Agenda Pod. We'd love to have you donate to us. There's a lot of great things on there. You can offer suggestions to us. You can even be on the show. So, it would be awesome to, be able to have you on here. You can advertise all kinds of different things. So again, patron.podbean.com/Black Agenda Pod.
Yes, please donate to us, help us out. And the last thing we'll say is that you can find us on YouTube. If you type in The Black Agenda, we have our very first live interview with our guest. His name was Michael Rappaport, and we were talking about the possibility of the United States making voting mandatory. So it's a very interesting conversation we had with him about that. And then on the podcasting scene, we just released a new episode on Tuesday. We had an interview with Douglas Jefferson from the National African American Gun Association. Again, a great interview. We would pressure you to go listen to it. Go listen to all the episodes, really. But that one in particular was very good. And we'll have an episode coming up next week with Mr. Michael Twitty, who is a food historian. So we talked to him about, food in general and how that represents our culture and what that means to us as a people. And so look out for that episode coming out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Look for that coming out on Tuesday. And then we may have a special Thanksgiving episode, just hopefully with some viewer-fed messages telling us what they are going to do for Thanksgiving and what their plans are and what it means to them to be able to get together with family, even though a lot of us may not be able to this year. So look for all of that coming up. Again, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Black Agenda Pod. And until next week, on Saturday at 4 o'clock, you can catch us for Weekly Roundup 15. Until then, we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for watching.